Welcome. We haven't actually given this week a title. I think sometimes we get sick of trying to think of titles, and we know that actually you talk about the same kind of thing each week anyway, but I think it's quite nice to have it open. So if anyone does have questions or things that they've seen this week,
or a title,
or people that were on last week, if anything's come to them or occurred to them, we'd love to hear that. I feel a bit frazzled. We wanted to listen to our friend's webinar, which finished at 7. Well, I think it was still going on when we left. So we left at about 5 to 7, watching Janet Riney's webinar with our friends. So I feel a little bit frazzled.
Yeah.
So we have no title and I feel frazzled. So that's a good start.
Cool.
But does anyone have questions? Because a few of you guys were on last week.
Louise.
Hello. It's not so much a question, more of an observation, really. Obviously, we did the amazing 3-day retreat with you guys, and I can see some familiar faces on here as well who were on there. And and like, it just amazes me how the unexpected stuff that comes from this wisdom, like you know, just I feel like just once again I've been floating in this amazing feeling. There's been so much going on in the world, obviously, like it seems to be changing on a weekly basis, and I had a couple of moments where I felt a little bit emotional by things, but yet still able to just see. I almost feel like in a way I'm living on a different planet, because I'm seeing things just from an amazing, like, beautiful, perfect perspective. And not always, but it's like each and every time I open my heart to allowing whatever wants to come through, and spending time with you guys and listening to the wisdom that you share, it's just incredible. Like, drop into a deeper and deeper space when you think and I think I said it like when you think that you've seen something, and then it's like, oh, that's not it, and then it's like, oh, that's not it, oh, that's not it, and each time you just go into these different spaces, and it's like I can't like thank you enough for what you share and what you point to, and just the magic that is on offer for each and every human being on the planet. And I've not really spoke to you since, but it's like, you know, since we did the 3 days, but things have just, I can't put my finger on what it is, or like, but things are just so different. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I know you said that you've had like you have to sleep the notepads. You're just full of ideas and creativity. And
is that what you call Lee now?
She doesn't sleep.
It's me with the curly ring binder hair. Carry on. Forget it. Sure. Carry on. That's beautiful, though. I love it. I love it when people come to us and they say, "I can't put my finger on it." It's in that. It's in that you cannot know that truth truly exists. It is completely unknowable. You know, people were speaking to somebody today about seekers, and how we come across many seekers, and many seekers seem to stop the search, or the search quietens down when they come across this conversation. And I described myself in that moment to this lady. I said, I was never really a seeker, or so I never thought. But in truth, I was. I was seeking fulfillment. I was seeking happiness. I was seeking contentment. I was seeking love. I was seeking justification for my own existence, validation. IRM. And I think in that, there we are all on a search. Now, where does this search take us? It takes us into work, it takes us into education, it takes us into religion, it takes us into relationships, it takes us on holidays, it takes us on pilgrimages, it takes us into poetry, it takes us into biblical religious texts. But I know that when I found myself, I was just right where I was stood. And I think this is what people tend to find, that the very essence of, they're looking for something. Everybody's on this search for something. However, we've got confused along the way, and we believe this something is something outside of our existence, outside of our consciousness. As though there could be any form of experience or realization or enlightenment that takes place outside of our consciousness. I always say this, but anybody who realizes God, it comes through them. So where is the first place we must start looking for this truth? Has to be an internal inquiry. Anything we can look at in the world, there is a world full of pointers to it. When you start opening up your eyes and seeing, and one of the things, this is why I talk about nature a lot, because I believe nature is a gateway to realization. And I don't mean that nature itself hands us the keys. I mean, like, once we start to get eyes for it and an open mind. I remember I was with my mum and was with Jen, I was with my dad, and we were on the, spending an awful lot of time in Scotland. And we were on the Galloway coast, one of my favourite places, a couple of hours just up the road from us, like, and there's this place called Cairnholy. Now, Cairnholy is just this beautiful, I think it's Neolithic burial tomb with standing stones that go across the front. And I can guarantee you, if we all jumped on a bus tomorrow, have to be a very long bus, given the 2 metre span distance between everybody, we would have jumped on a train and go to Cairnholy. I can guarantee you one thing, there will be a man called Joseph stood there. And Joseph is somebody you would probably consider to be an eccentric American man. And he turned up at Cairnholy one day. He saw the signpost for it off the road that runs along the coast, and he went up, he drove up and said, I'm going to go have a look. And he said, and when I stood there, I had an experience. And I've come back every single day to try and unravel the mystery of Cairnholy. And Mum said, what do you know about Cairnholy then? After your 10 years of coming every single day and observing the light, observing the surroundings.
It's like he had all these pencils marking different bits of light, and some kids came
shadows,
up.
Yeah.
I knocked one over, and he went, oh, that's all right. I'll take that measurement again next year.
Yeah.
And it was just for that day, like the kid had ruined it.
And this man said, well, what do I know about them? Oh, how long have they been here? She said. How long do you think they've been here? He said, well, I know they were here 10 years ago. Because when I first came, I saw them. He said, and I've seen a photograph of them at the Second World War. So I'm pretty sure they were here during the Second World War. And he said, I don't know. What do you think? What do you feel when you stand here? What comes to you? He said, if you stare at something long enough, you will learn something about it. I remember thinking, this man is my kind of scientist. He's not a man who thinks he knows everything. He's a man on pure inquiry. My kind of man. my kind of scientist. I love scientists like that. People who look, they observe, and then they, like Lou was just describing, they don't hold on to that concept that they've unearthed within themselves, that thing that has created a shift and perhaps learned a bit of something. They let it go. All right, now what? Now what else can come through? And it's the same for this. When I met that man, I remember falling in love with that man, and I think my mum found him quite attractive. Dad's in the other room, I'm sure. Yeah, my girl. He was a deeply interested human being. He was a really deeply interested human being. Hey, up on. And you're absolutely right, Lou. We come across this kind of inquiry, and for some reason, at some point, we hear something. We hear something. We tend to blame it on the person who was talking at the time, or we blame it on the book, or we blame it on the music, or we blame it on the whatever, we blame it on the place. But like Joseph stood at Cairn Holy, that experience came through him. I stood at Cairn Holy and I thought, what a beautiful place. This is so interesting. I did not have the enlightenment experience that Joseph had stood at Cairn Holy. If it was Cairn Holy that created the experience, I would have stood there and shared his experience, and we could have both set off on this mad 11-year now inquiry into a load of standing stones. But I didn't. My moment of realization came through looking at a jackdaw. And I know plenty of people whose moment of realization did not come from looking at a jackdaw. You see, it's never something outside of us. And one of the statements that Sid Banks would repeatedly say is, there is no outside of you. There is no outside of truth. Everything is truth. Truth is the word to describe the creative force that forms everything. Every person, every being, every plant, every insect, every planet, every sun, the universe. Everything is that. Playing the game that it's not. So at our heart is truth. Our very essence is it. And that's why this inquiry is always an internal one. This is why anybody seeking, read the text, listen to the talks, read the poetry, go for your walks, but understand the truth and the answer that everybody's looking for is not, it's not in a person, it's not in a place, it's within them. The peace, the fulfillment, the contentment is there within, always, as a possibility, ready to come out in any moment. At the moment, there's this big thing, and there's a big shake-up going on globally when it comes to equality. Everybody's absolutely equal. We are totally equal to a gnat. We are totally equal to a tree. We're totally equal culturally. We're totally equal racially, sexually. It's not even the right word to describe male and female, is it? Sexually. No, what's that?
It's just sex.
Sex.
Gender.
Because technically we're not equal sexually, are we? gender, but in essence we are, because everything ultimately is the same thing. So when you start to break it down and fundamentally look at what is it that is creating the difference, or the appearance of difference, should I say, you have to see it comes from exactly the same place as everything else. It comes from within us. The difference, the idea of difference, is a thought. To me, that's the good news. It's a lot easier for a mind to change than to have to change the world. And I'm thankful that the moment a mind changes, the world changes. And I'm thankful that people on this call are starting to wake up to that. We had a beautiful conversation with a lady on this call right now, a few days ago now, about how when she saw different, somebody in her life showed up different. I don't know if that lady would be prepared to talk about it, but if she would, that would be awesome. If she wouldn't, that's cool. Oh, Alice, do you have something to say, love? Oh, one sec.
Yeah, sorry. Got a bit of a sore throat. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. All my life I've listened to thoughts and I believed that they were true. So if a thought popped up, I believed it was true, and if it was telling me that there was a problem in an area of my life, then it needed to be looked at. And if a thought was saying that I shouldn't be there or should be somewhere else, I basically I got up and got on with dealing with it, trying to find the solution. Never questioned it. But since the retreat with you, and then obviously chatting to you as well, literally the last 14 years of my life changed. And I suddenly saw my husband, who was my partner 14 years, we've been married the last 3 years, suddenly saw him completely differently. And I just fell in love with him all over again. And everything that I'd felt and thought, it was because of a thought. He never did anything. He was and still is. He's really goofy, but he's a complete sweetheart. He really is. But every so often, and I can see it in not just my marriage, but every area of my life, it's almost cyclical. And I guess everyone has their own flavour of conditioning and habitual thoughts that pop up. And I realised that this marriage or relationship thought, every so often it'll pop up. It could be that time of the month. It could just be, I got up on the wrong side of the bed, just having an off day. And thought will pop up. It's him, it's a marriage, it's a relationship. And without even questioning it or looking at it, it's like, okay, where's my suitcase? Need to pack my bags, need to find a way out. You know, we need a plan. We need a plan to get out of here, and this is the answer. I never questioned it. And the only problem was a thought had popped up, I listened to it, I believed it, and then acted on it. So put that one to bed. And then since then, I've seen other thoughts coming up. And what's so beautiful is what's been coming back since the retreat is something that you shared about, go back to before the thought, before the created. And as soon as that thought arises, or that insight arises, the mind's quiet. And then what comes up, and today it's been constant, is what's wrong with this moment? What's wrong right now? And it's like, nothing. And I popped back into that place I was in during the retreat. that Lou was talking about. And it's like, oh my God, I love this. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's ever been wrong. It was just that I believed it. And I don't know, it's just amazing. And when I'm feeling that and I'm feeling the truth of it, I now get something that you, Dave, you mentioned when we chatted, when I said, you know what, I get this understanding, but I've still got issues. And you kind of leaned forward and you said, you do, you get this understanding, do you? Because we don't get it. And I thought, oh my God, this isn't something you get. You become aware of it and you start living, and everything just starts falling away. But it's not something you get. It's not a place to get to. It's not a destination. And you just keep seeing more and more. And just when you think, I've got it, I've got this, I've graduated from this school, it's like something hits you in the face. And it's like, no, I don't. And then you drop through that and you start seeing more. And it's amazing. But that's not to say that I don't experience thoughts that come in and grab me. That doesn't happen. It still happens. But I'm waking up through it more and more. And what I'm experiencing is I will get caught up and I will get grouchy and I will think there's a problem. But then I come through it. But I don't know if anyone else has felt this, and maybe everyone's experiences it differently. But I noticed that my heart slows down. It starts beating slower. My breathing slows down. The way I talk starts to slow down, and suddenly I'm just in love with everyone and everything, and I just have this goofy kind of look on my face, and I don't know. My son, Ollie, he'll come up to me and say, "Mummy, you've got that look on your face again," and he'll give me a kiss, and then he'll go off and play. And it's just, he sees it, he recognizes it, but he's in it almost all the time. I mean, today when I picked him up, his teacher mentioned something, just a misunderstanding. So straight away I had this sense of, shit, life was good. I got this. And now we've got a problem. So we chatted, talked about it, and I kept getting, what's wrong with this moment? Nothing. It's okay. And, he was caught up in his thinking. The other child was, it's all fine. And then he got a little upset. He cried. We got home. Next thing I know, he's in the shower and he's singing. And the rest of the evening carried on like that. He didn't once go back into, Mommy told me off, this happened at school, or this means me, this defines me. None of that. He just went from second to second to second, experience to experience to experience, rolled with it. Got angry, got upset, cried, laughed, joked. But I saw how throughout my life I got caught up. If something happened, it defined me. That was a label that I had to live with. If an experience happened, I had to be wary when I was with those people because I'd embarrass myself. Or what would they think? And now it's just, what's wrong with this moment? Nothing. Everything's okay. And I just love it. And I love the ups, I love the downs. I love it when I don't get it, and I love it when I'm experiencing it again. It's just great. And I would not want to be in that place where I experience complete bliss 24/7. That's boring. This is great. You get to experience it all of it, yet you know that none of it's actually real. It's not actually touching you. So yeah, like Lou said, thank you to you guys, for doing what you do. It's just, you've taken a load off my mind. you really have. Thank you.
No, we didn't. Thank you, but you did it. Thanks, Alice. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
You did it so subtly. That was impressive.
Not that subtle. Yeah. Thanks, Alice. That was a beautiful thing. I remember when we talked, and you spoke about your husband, and then I can't remember what the hell we talked about, to be honest. that text that next day or that night where you sat down and he'd come home and he'd been attentive and he'd been loving, and you'd seen that it's a character. You know, even the relationships that we have exist within our mind. There is no outside of the mind. The mind is the nature, the creator of reality. It creates every single person we meet. Their character within our being is created. This is why people fall in love with certain people and not with others. And there is a person for everybody on earth. And beauty, you know that saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Absolutely. It's true. It's a fundamental truth. There's no such thing as a bad relationship. And I'm not saying if somebody's getting violent and stuff like that, it's a good thing. I'm not talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about it's all thought. The way we perceive one another is all thought. You know, sometimes I look at Jen and I'm like, I wish she'd just fuck off home. I've had enough of this shit. Blah, 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 blah. And that looks so real to me. It looks so real. And I'm like, just fuck off and leave me alone. I'm going to go metal detecting. Half an hour later, I come out of that space and I look around and I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't send you home. You get the pinpoint that you can dig. And I'm so thankful. And you see, it's like we take it so seriously. I'm not saying, I want to make this really, really clear at this point. If there is a violent relationship going on, you've got to do what's right for you. Go and get help or whatever. You know, we've got this beautiful gift of common sense. I used to get violent. Never got violent with partners. Well, I get violent towards total strangers.
Inanimate objects.
Inanimate objects, and myself. I know it was all thought now. I didn't at the time. That was the difference between then and now. I know that reality is a construction of consciousness, a miraculous, majestic, phenomenal display of consciousness.
You often see people you used to fight with when we're out in town now, and you're like, oh, you have a good old chat with them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, who's that? And you're like, oh, we always used to get in fights. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you see them completely different.
Yeah, and we can have a crack, and you see, it's the moment the mind changes, reality changes in front of our eyes. I'm not saying the world. People confuse reality for an external event. Matter. Physical stuff. Things. I'm talking about the force that is aware of things. Our reality, my reality, Jen's reality. This point is quite an awakener for many people when they realize that the reality that they see is entirely unique. It has never been dreamt before in history, and it never ever will again in any history, in any moment. This moment will never be dreamt again the way we're dreaming it now by anybody on earth. Every single moment is an entirely unique display of consciousness. This goes back to Alice. The perfection in the moment. And when we start to become aware of that, oh, I am literally seeing my reality. My reality is created within me, and that's what I see. How is it created? Well, it's this conscious state. What is consciousness? I do not have a clue. And it's thought. It's consciousness thinking. What is thinking? Well, that's consciousness changing. It's consciousness dreaming. It's consciousness creating. Every single thought is a unique expression of consciousness. Some thoughts we are very, very much aware of. The vast majority we are totally unaware of their presence. They just happen, and we experience it because we tend to think of thoughts as words, pictures and images. We have to open up our mind bigger than that when it comes to thought. Thought is life. What is life? It's an inexplicable event. What is thought? It is an inexplicable event. You can never know thought. To know thought is to know the creator. To know thought is creation. We're instantly into the created the moment we think we know something. It's not that. That's why I forget I've said this before, but it was some French philosopher who said, openness is the least blasphemous word for God. Openness, an open heart, an open mind, one that doesn't think it knows everything. That's getting closer and closer to truth. Truth isn't a knowledge thing. It's a no knowledge thing. It's the absolute opposite direction to what we think it is. But that's what everybody is. That's what everything is. Here we all are walking around on planet Earth, and none of us have a frigging clue how the hell we all got here. Do we forget that? We forget that. Here we are all walking around thinking we know what we want, how life should be, and blah, blah, blah. And you should be more like this, you should be more like that, you should be more like this. This shouldn't happen, that shouldn't happen. God, life's terrible. Is it? Isn't life a miraculous, inexplicable event? What we're getting confused with is beliefs. I always remember, I always remember my mother telling this story. My mother's Margaret on this screen here. She'll be the one crocheting or knitting or something, not paying attention. She is paying attention. She's probably got the archers on. All of them. But I always remember my mum saying, I always said I'll steal this off you, Mum. She said, it's like I've lived my life in a tunnel. Throughout my life, I've created and adopted other people's beliefs, and I've created my own. Totally paraphrasing now, but there was quite often a sense of self-righteousness, which I think we're all familiar with. An opinion at every corner. And the way my mother described it was totally beautiful. She said, I was born into this infinite potential. I was born into this infinite potential. From infinite potential. It has infinite potential. It's not quite what my mum said, but I'm just chucking that in. She said, I was born into this infinite potential. And she said, and throughout my life, I developed beliefs. Took on other people's opinions about what people said, and I believed them, more beliefs. And she said, and before I knew it, I was no longer stood in this infinite potential, but I was stood in this tunnel created within it. And this was the two things that, when you said this, Mum, I remember, yes. She said, and I became narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned. That's not possible. You can't do that. Why would you do that? They shouldn't be doing that. That's terrible. Oh, God, isn't the world terrible? oh, life's hard. And then you spoke about how when you came across this, you described it as without effort, these bricks of this tunnel started to fall. All of a sudden, things started to look lighter. Light was getting in. And you found yourself stood more in that infinite potential again, without the limitations of I can, I cannot, impossible, impossible. And I think that is one of the most beautiful metaphors I've heard. How we can find ourselves so narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned because we are so, as little Rach said on that retreat, Stockholm syndrome. When we fall in love with our captors, thinking that they're doing us good, our beliefs, our self-righteousness, our ideologies, our ego, thinking that's the thing that's keeping us safe. I was like that very much so with my anger and violence. I thought that was the thing that kept me safe. If I could out-intimidate people, I would be safe. I didn't realize that was the cause of my suffering.
That's when I was listening, and I was looking for videos for my niece's 13th birthday, and I came across loads of old video footage of me, so probably from late 2014, early 2015, and one of them was a talk myself and my ex-husband Rudy gave in Finland at a conference, and it was so weird watching myself because I can see actually as I'm sharing totally honestly about how I see life and insights I've had, and it was all really fresh what I was sharing, and then I was kind of looking at it now and I see it so differently. And a bit like what Lou said, you can see how easy it is to hold on to our concepts because we glimpse something, or we get an experience or a feel or a touch of something, and then we try and create an idea of what that is, and then we kind of almost lose touch of the essence and then hold on to the idea. And I think that's one of the things that seems to happen around this understanding, is you kind of keep getting humbled again, because it seems as soon as we build something up too much, it's like, I don't know, we get humbled, we get brought to our knees again. Like I could see, like I was saying to you, like I'd got to such a stable part of my life and I kind of thought I had it sussed, and I had no idea. Like I was watching it thinking, oh God, I had no idea that actually 4 months after that, like everything in my life would change. But I saw also the absolute innocence in how we do that. Like, because we make it up, we're the author of it, and it looks believable, but like Alice was saying, she used to just believe what came into her mind because it looks and feels real. It's reality for us. And I think with everything going on in the world at the moment, like I have got more interested in reading articles on equality, on equity, on what's happened in the past. And like I've been able to read articles and just feel really emotional reading them, hearing about what people have been through in their lives. And like our friend Janet just shared some of the experiences of racism she's had in her life. And I feel like you allow yourself, so I'm getting really distracted when you're typing. I'll wait for you to finish. I feel like you allow yourself to feel more. And I think I thought this was about feeling less and not expressing and not having a stability or a constant. And I feel like no, you fully get to engage and feel and not be afraid of it, and see the depth and the beauty in the moment. Like there's nothing wrong with this moment, whether that be peace of mind, whether it be sadness, whether it be whatever it is. And I've realised that I've probably avoided certain news and certain things because I don't like the feeling of, but I've like read some articles and got really kind of upset by them, but then almost like, well, what can I do to help? And then I come back to this understanding is, I feel like it's one of the most important messages in however people share that, because I know there's people all around the world that haven't heard of the 3 principles, but they've got a sense of what we are. They've got a sense of what we are before our stories, and they work from that place with people. And I think that's the thing that will change the world. And like you can just see just people sharing on the call, like how their life's been impacted through learning this. Like, I don't know, they get more genius ideas, they feel more open-minded, they see more infinite potential, they see through their beliefs, or beliefs fall away. And it's like what can happen from that place is very different than when we're tunnel visioned or narrow-minded, because the way the world sits right in this moment is because we have thought in the way that we've thought up until this point as a society, as a world. And you can see how invisible thought is to us, like how invisible our own constructs are and how invisible our own limitations are. So then it's almost like you can see the innocence in, I can see the innocence in what's happening at the moment, in everyone involved in the stuff in the news, because I know how invisible my beliefs are. And I can see that when we don't know that we're living in a world of thought, we blindly act out of it. So I feel so grateful for this understanding, because I felt like I've had so much compassion and love come up at times when I think before this understanding, I would have had judgment and anger and fear. And I think that's the potential with this. You see how, you start to see how this works within your own life. See how it works for you. You see your own innocence. You see how easy it is to get lost and caught up, even when we think we know something. Even though we've glimpsed something around these principles, we still get totally caught up. And you see how we never do it on purpose. We don't wake up going, right, I'm going to get totally lost in misunderstanding today and be out of order to everyone I speak to. You see that it's invisible to us. This stuff's invisible. And I don't know, I think that my understanding and my love for everyone has gone up, and my judgment and it feels like it rebalances us. And I haven't tried to do that, because my mum often used to say to me, come on, that's a bit judgmental, when I'd hold a grudge against a teacher for like 10 years for saying one wrong thing to me and, you know, hating them. But I didn't see it, because like they'd wronged me, they'd been out of order to me, they'd hurt my feelings, and it was all about me and how, and I never really used to see other people live in their own thought created world, and what they think, they feel, and they experience, and it's their reality. And like Alice said, like before, she just blindly followed. But when we get to have, but also I noticed in what Alice said that a new thought keeps popping into her mind now, is the perfection of the moment. What's wrong? I'm all right in this moment. What's wrong with this moment? So as we start to let things fall away, what comes up is often more helpful. And then it might be a bit like when I watched my video from 2015 and I'm not totally on board with what I'm saying. In a few days, weeks, months, years time, that thought might come to mind and it does nothing for you. But you see how perfect it is in this moment to wake you up and bring you back to the moment. And I think that's the cool thing, like you were saying earlier, there's never ever been this moment here now. Like it's always new. It can sometimes feel stale because it seems like we're thinking the same thing over and over again, but it's still in this new moment. It's never been this time in this space.
The rest of our life starts now. Always. What's done's done. You see how much suffering is created when we hold on to it. Hold on to our stories. Hold on to what they said, what you said, what you did.
I spoke in that talk of a moment I'd had, which I think I might have mentioned in last week's group, but I was sharing with Dick and Bettinger at a retreat down in Coggeshall in Essex, and I caught my dad's eye, and he was sat in the front row, and I fell in love with him. And then it's like suddenly it wasn't my dad; it was just another human being without any labels attached to it. It was the weirdest thing. I can't really put it into words. And then it just sort of spread out, and there's my mum, and my mum's best friend was there, and I got to like experience my family without the story of who I think they all were, and history. And like when I was 13, my mum and dad nearly separated, and I was really angry with my dad, and I didn't realise how I'd sort of held on to that and looked at him through that judgment. And I was like 30, probably 32, when I had this experience with him in the audience. And it was like this layer fell away, and suddenly I got to connect with my dad in a whole new way. So I didn't realise I'd had this block because of the judgment I'd made at the age of 13. It was totally invisible to me. And we got to experience this whole new relationship again. And I didn't even know it was there. And he felt the difference after that course, that suddenly I'd opened my heart to him again, whereas I'd kind of closed off. And you can see how easy with family we build up stories, we build up resentments, and I don't know, I think it's totally invisible to us until it's seen. And so I didn't mean to do it. I don't mean to have this kind of slight edge around me when I was with him, but it was so visibly not there when it had gone. And then I sat, and that's when I burst into tears in front of like 80 people, and Dick was like, whoa, what's going on with you? And I was like, I just love everyone. And just we ended up having a break shortly after that. So I was like, I just love everyone. And it like expanded out. But it was one of the most, I remember people, when I started learning about this, used to say, oh, it's like you get to clean your eyeballs. It's like you get to see people with fresh eyes over and over and over and over again. And I kind of knew what they meant, but this was like, it was like seeing without all my beliefs. And when you see without beliefs, all you see is beauty and love, and people it's just sameness, perfection.
And that was the last time you took ecstasy before talk. I think one of the nice things is, can you pass me a piece of paper just on there?
Which one?
Just, yeah. I think one of the nice things about this is as we start to uncover truth, as we start to realise what's true, we will be shown what isn't. And I think that's bear with 1 sec. See what Daniel's has to say. Down with that, Lou. As we start to uncover truth, it will show you your ego. You will start to see the filters through which you have observed life. These are thoughts. These are beliefs. That's what the ego is. It's a ball of beliefs. It's a ball of thoughts. It's the tunnel we carry around observing life through. This tunnel doesn't really exist. It's not a substantial thing. Thank God it's not stone and mortar, bricks. That's why in one moment the tunnel can collapse. And in that moment we will discover something. And the term given to that moment is called insight or enlightenment. Revelation. And it's such a beautiful thing that it's so simple. That we don't have to do anything. There's other people on these calls who we've been speaking to lately and one fresh new perspective, or everything looks different. You don't disappear from being a human being, you become more human. You fully engage with the human. I feel like so many people are trying to escape being a human being. We're trying to run away from it. Spiritually, we're trying to find enlightenment. So why? So we can escape this. What's this? This is simply a construction of our mind. What is enlightenment? When you realize it. When you see past it. When you see beyond the construction, the creation, and you realize that the creative force, that's you. I was never what I thought I was, and I never will be. Those are ideas. Those are concepts. The essence is not a concept or an idea. And when we start to find that space, when we start to find it, it's like people, we don't have to work on relationships. They just sort themselves out. It's that thing like Alice was describing right here, right now. What is there? The past done. It's a ball of memories. Most of the time it's a ball of shitty shit that we just carry around and keep sniffing. Sorry about that. I don't know where that one came from. It was Buddha. Buddha spoke to me just then. Yeah, shuttle Buddha. That's what we do most of the time. We carry around shit and we keep wondering why we stink, why life stinks.
I had to take my granddad to the hospital once for an appointment, and I took my niece with me, so she would have only been, it was Lewin, she was probably only 2.5. She was very chatty. She learned to speak very early on. And I remember sat in this waiting room, and like, I was really funny about hospitals. I didn't want to touch anything. I didn't really, I was kind of a lot more confident than I had been before, but I was still quite quiet. I'd only been around the principals a couple of years. And I remember watching Lewin like go around and put her hands on people's laps and go and like stroke people's heads. And like, she tried to engage with everyone in the waiting room. And it was like, you could see she wasn't seeing through belief. She was just going around experiencing, and she wasn't thinking about germs. She wasn't thinking about the fact she didn't know that person, or that person might not like her. She didn't have all those concepts. And I remember so many moments with her when she was really young where she didn't have all those concepts, and she used to just connect and form relationships with people, because I feel like it's so natural for us to do before we create and build all of these ideas and concepts and beliefs of who we are and who other people are. And like when I took her on the tube, when she was probably only under a year, I had her like strapped to my front, and she was waving at everyone and smiling at everyone, and it got everyone on the tube talking. But she didn't have the concept. You don't talk to people on the tube. There's dangerous people on the tube. And it just, you could see that her
strangers
presence, it seemed to allow other people to get more present, and we communicated. And like some of the early years with Lewin, and probably more so with Lewin because I spent so much time with her, I learned so much about my own ego, because she hadn't developed much of one then. And like now she's nearly 15 and
she doesn't get out of bed.
She doesn't get out of bed, and she likes these kind of people and hates those. And yeah, you can see like she's just built up this whole character, but it's cool because it's just what we do.
And
Like,
at some point it'll collapse.
yeah, and a new one will, like, I've watched her go through like the Peppa Pig phase when everything was Peppa Pig,
That
and
was
then
last year,
like
wasn't
now
it?
it's like I can't believe I ever used to watch that. And then her sister told us today, oh, low-waisted jeans are back in fashion, Lewin's wearing them, and she's like taking the piss out of me for years for wearing low-waisted jeans, but now they're fashionable, she's now starting to wear them. And it's like you can see that from this little being, she was just like a little beam of light. She just loved, and she connected, and she had so much time for everyone and everything. And then she just created little egos and characters, and you see the innocence in that. That's just what we do. We come up with ways to cope with life. If we feel we work with someone who was really abused as a child, and they created this real tough persona, but when you're in your mid-20s and you approach everything with that persona, it really doesn't work, and it often gets you fired. But you can see how innocent it was that they created that, because they had to get by in some pretty tough times and put up with a lot of stuff. So it's like seeing that total innocence in all of us. And I think we can get into the blame if we start understanding this and we're still maybe not having a nice experience, or we're still being judgmental. It's like, I feel there's a kindness that comes with this. Just be kind to yourself, because reality looks real. It's the point of it, until it crumbles and we get to see another reality. And that's when we learn why it's an illusion, because it can change. Like you were saying, how can you look at someone and be totally in love with them, and then another, like, oh, piss off, leave me alone, you're the most annoying person. And they may not have even said anything. Like, you can see how the relationship we have is one with our own mind, which how the person doesn't even need to be alive anymore, and I can have arguments with them in my head. Like, you see how the world really does exist inside us.
I've never met Donald Trump.
Yeah, you have a lot of conversations with him.
A lot of conversations with him. Mother, are you coming? Oh, you going? Bye, Mum. Archers is on.
Oh, you can close the laptop. You can close the laptop.
Yeah, don't get undressed and walk in front of that thing, Mum. Well done. Any questions, anybody? Any observations or? Doran. Expand, s'il vous plaît. That's Afrikaans, for those that don't speak Afrikaans.
How's it?
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, let me firstly start off. I have really missed these bursts of love and light on a Thursday evening.
Oh, we missed you, dude.
Yeah. No. Well, when Jenny was talking, where she pretty much just said now she just loved everyone. My gift that I got to see was the purest form of love that exists, and not romantic love or anything. It's pretty much the same as how we've been created. Like, for example, in church that I used to grow up in, they say God is love. So I just got to see that beyond a physical human form. And that's pretty much also where all my stuff fell away. And the easiest way to explain it was, it's just the purest form of love. And when Jenny was talking, she just kind of like reminded me of that. And it's just like, oh yeah, that was my first insight. It wasn't that one, but it was that. So that was quite cool. And out of seeing that, for the first time in my life, I actually understood what it was to be grateful to see something where a lot of people used to say, yeah, just be grateful. Willfully be grateful for what you have. No, I'm grateful for nothing. How can you tell me to be grateful for something if I don't see it? But in that moment, I understood what gratefulness felt like. And it wasn't something that I tried to experience. It just formed out of its own. And that was really one of the most coolest experiences that I've had. And out of that, so much stuff fell away that I tried to figure out before then. And it just showed itself all by itself. So, Jenny, thank you for your little bit of wisdom and reminding me of that.
Thanks, Doran. We haven't seen you for
Thanks, dude.
it's nearly 2 years. Well, I haven't
Yeah.
got the camera on. Doran, he always lights up. We love to see Doran.
Okay.
Well done.
Yeah.
Kidding, leave it on.
Yeah, it's freezing over here.
It's good to see your face, man.
It was really nice for me to watch the video the other day and be reminded, because like I said to Dave, I was just talking about so much stuff which I'd completely forgotten. Like I'd forgotten how much I'd learned from that moment, and I'd actually forgotten I remembered the experience because it was just love, but I'd forgotten what had fallen away, and that was my judgment of my dad. And I love how, like, we often say to people, like, what was there when you started learning about this, when you woke up to the magic, that there was something there was something that we experienced. And when we had that conversation, you asked me, I said, I realized in my first kind of course, the feeling was there's nothing ever to worry about, nothing I have to worry about in this life. And you're like, that was what you realized. And then, like, for you got to see like the purest form of love.
Well, I don't think that at the same time that's it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like the content to it's different, but you get to see, like, behind the curtain, you get to see the before, and you feel it, and then you try and describe it. But and I do think, love is such a beautiful way to describe it. But like you say, we so often think it means romantic, or it means,
it's a loaded word, isn't it?
the purest form of it.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with a physical feeling. It's beyond that.
Mm.
And what also fascinates me is, even with me having the gift to see that, I pretty much got caught up in a relationship for, as you guys know, where I also created pretty much a shadow, where before that I kind of like, no, I've seen the principles. I know what mind, thought, consciousness is. I've seen a glimpse of it. And then you bring that to a relationship, and then you don't buy into other people's stuff, and they get upset because you're not buying into it. And then that just turns into something very, very interesting. And now you also fool yourself with that. And then hopefully, eventually, you get to see the common sense has always been there. And then, yeah. So I'm back.
Dude, it's nice to see you. You look well.
A lot of weight has shifted since we last spoke.
Good. Doran's Doran, we met a few years ago now. We were out in South Africa, and when Doran started to speak, the room went very quiet and it listened. And Doran's got this beautiful gift. I remember saying, why are you not sharing? Because I smoke. I was like, dude, 6 years ago, if I'd known, no, it was about 5 years ago at the time, if I knew that you held the key to life, but you wouldn't share it because you smoked, I would punch you in the face. Dude, you've got to start sharing them.
I think you have been, haven't like, just you share with people now.
At times. So I don't physically go out and like share. It's pretty much when it makes sense to me to share.
I've got a soapbox. You can borrow it.
Sorry, Dave?
I've got a soapbox. I'll send it over.
A soapbox. Okay, cool. I'm waiting for it.
I'll send it over. I love that what you've described about that love. Who were we talking to? Somebody earlier on this week. Might have been, yeah. And it is that, it almost seems like as a man, I'm going to speak very much from a man now, a man who was a manly man, and for myself, should I say that. I always kind of was under the impression that love was weakness. Like, real strength was fight. That's where you show your strength, when you can fight through things. I can see this kind of built into society, fight mental illness, fight this, fight that, let's fight this, let's all fight this together, let's fight coronavirus, fight it. We fight everything.
Fight or sanitize.
Yeah, it's like, what? We fight stuff. What is it that really does the healing and the keeping safe? It's not fight, it's love. Is it not? Love for our family, love for humanity, love for our society, love for our people. It's that. It's not the fight that keeps us safe, it's the love. And when I know what you're talking about, dude, and it's like when we touch that space of love, that one glimpse of pure unconditional love will cleanse us all like that. It will kill the ego in a moment. That one glimpse of light, as people call it. It just does all the hard work. And again, I'll reiterate this point. This space does not exist outside of our being. It is our being. That's what everybody ultimately is. It is that love. And this is the thing that connects everybody. It's love.
I don't know if Kim, you want to share, but when we were speaking earlier on about, you were saying you want to make it really clear that it's not, this isn't passive, and it doesn't mean that if you're in a violent relationship you stay. But I know that you work with people and they fall in love with themselves, and you work a lot in domestic abuse and violence and things. And when people fall in love with themselves, they find that space within themselves. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. Then they make different decisions, but
yeah, sure. Yeah, we've lots of different types of relationships. Lots of them abusive. So it could be physically. There can be many different types of abuse going on. But when they have that moment, where just all of a sudden you can see it. We call it popping. It's like popcorn. Where all of a sudden they just go, and you can see them falling, and it's almost like if there was a vision in front of you, it'd be like their heart just goes like that, and they slow down, and little bit by little bit they start to see about the way thought works and how they've taken a lot seriously, and then they can also see what's happening in the relationship where the other person's taking their thoughts really seriously, these real made-up stories that they've got in their minds. And I've had that myself, so it's really easy to kind of share. I've been all sides of that, those experiences of growing up in an abuse and getting my own relationship and all that stuff. And Doran, don't worry about smoking, I still smoke fags. Don't let it stop you. I didn't let it stop me. And I had some thinking about it, Dave and Jen I've always had thinking about smoking.
You've been all right, not your fag.
Yeah, I smoke outside because I'm good like that. That's how I don't have to decorate often. But it's always a method to my madness. But I just think that when we kind of start seeing you know what I mean? Even the other person suffering, you know, that they don't realise they're making up all these stories and then really, really, truly believing them that they're real. And then that's motivating our behaviours, you know. So a lot of people think, you know, because we're sort of teaching domestic abuse, we teach what types of abuse there are in it. But for me, it's let's show up with a load of love, and wisdom comes out. I don't have any proper schedule, any kind, you know, you're supposed to do all these, you know. I'll just show up, and me and Leanne, we just really buzz off of each other. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of laughter, and even in that, they then see something, you know, and they'll all see different things at different times, and I don't hold on to any of it. It's just like I just know from my very, very soul what's inside them, because it's inside me. So because I completely know that through this lockdown as well, where you'd kind of think that loads of them would have really kind of fallen through the gap or whatever, they didn't. They actually, it didn't happen. And I had a few concerns. I'm like, what's going to happen? You know, we haven't got as many new people as what we thought we would get with the lockdown, but sometimes that can be quite difficult. But all our girls will find a way of going outside, even if it's just for a quick walk somewhere, so they can have a chat and a catch up, or come on a Zoom and stuff like that. And, you know, so it kind of works out. But I just see so much beauty in them, and I'm seeing so much fall away. And their relationships do change. Some of them leave, some of them don't. Some of them stay, you know, but you don't seem to have that same really, really fast mind. So even if it's not now, there's still different choices and life choices they make because of what they've understood. And I used to feel before that I had a kind of responsibility. I felt really responsible for making people see it, if you like, you know. But that too kind of really fell away, where I don't feel responsible. I just know from my deep, in my very soul, that all I have to do is show up with a lot of love in my heart, and that transmits anyway. It's felt, you know, and then they hear something from inside them, and I completely trust even the divine with all this madness that's going on. It feels to me like there's this big spiritual awakening happening. Do you know what I mean? And so much stuff is just going to fall away from people, and we're just going to see life very differently, in a much more loving, kind, fairer way, in a fairer society. And maybe money won't be such a, everybody, you know, you've got to have all these objects, you know. So I've got great hope and faith right now. A lot of people are like, you're so calm, Kim. And I'm like, I feel really at peace with all of it, you know, all of it. Even Trump, I'm like, got different thoughts on Trump too now.
Pure enlightenment.
I'd love to have a cup of tea with him. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it, love?
It really is.
It really is.
It really is.
I feel very blessed and grateful that I came upon this understanding. Really do.
Us too, love.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Over and out.
Oh, Kim, thank you, beautiful.
No, Kim shared a bit on our retreat as well, and I think someone had said sometimes it sounds like this understanding's passive, like you become passive, but I know that from things that Kim has shared, like the resilience and how brave people can become, and the courage they find to do what they need to do, whatever that is. So I think it's really beautiful to hear from you. Thank you. We haven't had a break, but do people want to have a quick 5-minute break just to get tea and go to the toilet? We normally do it at 8, but I've just realised it's 12.
Kim, you want to? Yeah.
Cup of tea. All right, so it is, say just come back at 12:30. Just under 10 minutes. Cool. See you in a sec.
See you in a sec. You do it. I was doing it wrong.
What, it's sometimes not best to hear him speak when he's in a bad mood.
What did somebody just speak about me?
Who was it?
It's him.
Is it that Lee lad?
He's living the dream. And
Oh, Lee. I remember you. I remember you on that sofa. Good looking lad, you.
Dave, you need to do a show on TV.
No, I'll stop now. Right. We're recording? Oh, we were recording. Okay, right. Carry on. Get professional. Somebody say something good. Any questions? Bailey.
Oh, you know what I've kind of really noticed for myself is I used to hear like Elsie and Chip talk about the state of no thought, and I used to think, how can you not think? Because even if you're walking or whatever you're doing, you're still thinking, but you're not realising you're thinking because you can't always see what you're thinking. And then throughout this, I've really seen that actually I've been in a state of no thought quite a lot of the time. I mean, and even when it's happened, all sorts of things have happened. But I find myself really just really seeing where somebody is, and there's just like no effect on me. I'm so neutral, At one point, I was just like, have I turned into a psychopath? And I just don't have any feeling. Do you know what I mean? And I was just like, and then my dog Caesar, he's got something going. He's got some sort of neck trauma, so he's drunk. Like he walks, and it's like he's forgotten what his paw's supposed to do. So he's not quite putting his paw down like he should be, And then he's like sort of falling all over the place. But he's not in any kind of pain. But then all of a sudden, I had to take him to the vet, and I was outside the vet, and then we were like finally letting them go in to see and have a proper examination. And then I was having all these thoughts, and there was like tears just streaming down my face, thinking about, I'm not ready for my dog to go yet. If he's in pain, I'm going to have to let him go. If I try and keep him, that's just so selfish. Oh, his mum died when she was 14. He's only 9. He's got 5 years yet. Do you know what I mean? So in my head, I'd created, well, his mum's been there since she was 14. So therefore, he's going to go too young. And I had all this. So I was outside the vet, like, crying. And then all of a sudden I was like, right, you don't even know what's happening yet. Why don't you just wait and see what's happening? So I'm like, all right then, I'm going to wait and see what's happening. And then when she came out, she said, he's not in pain or anything. And I was like, brilliant, he's not in pain. It's just the messages ain't getting through. So he's had to have a different kind of tablet. And we still don't know what's going to be happening with him. But it was kind of Lisa's story reminded me when she was talking about her dog. Do you know what I mean? And how all of a sudden she wasn't present. She was just really upset and not just being there. And I'm like, then I looked at him and I was just like, whatever time you've got here with me, I'm going to make it like the other 9 years I've had with you. Just having a loving, cuddling, beautiful relationship that I've got with my dogs. Do you know what I mean? So, and then the next thought coming was like, no, you're certainly not a narcissist. And then I was like laughing it off again. So yeah, just move through. So most of the time meditative state, other times not so much.
Isn't that well?
So I just wanted to share that with you.
As you were saying that, Kim, when I first came across or woke up to this, is it us that's bad on the internet? Looks like, yeah, it is.
Should I put my hotspot on?
Yeah. Just bear with 1 sec. We're just going to change Wi-Fi's because ours is terrible. Is it really windy for everybody else? Properly windy here. The northwest's getting battered. Is that
Properly windy.
Properly
Up
windy.
north.
Racist. Just because you live in Kendal. We're only 3 miles above you.
Racist.
I remember when I first came across this, I used to spend a lot of time in the Manjushri. I know Anna knows what the Manjushri is, and Buddhist temple near us, and I remember seeing this beautiful nun. I think she was Tibetan or something like that. Beautiful woman. You'll remember her, Anna. You used to say, I think she knows something.
Me?
Yeah. I remember
They all know a bit of something.
I remember going there once with you, and you said about this nun, she knows something. You might have even been there for this talk. I don't know. But I remember she spoke about how her and her dog, she loves the dog, and she always used to take it for a walk. So to take it for a walk, she put the dog in the car, and they drive together to the park, and they go for a walk around this park, her and the dog. And that was all well and good until she got a new car. And all of a sudden she gets this new car, and it had leather seats. And she said, and so before I knew it, I was putting blankets down before the dog could get in. I was making it sit down outside. I got the seats all ready so the dog could jump in. And she said, and one day she jumped through from the back, and in the center console bit, there's a leather top. She said she scratched it with her feet, with a claw. And it was the first mark that she got in the leather. And she said, and I was so upset. She said, I was so upset. I was so upset that the dog had done this. She said, and I was telling her off, get back in the back, get back in the back. And she carried on driving. And at some point, she said, this thought entered my mind. She said, if she dies, you'll treasure that scratch. You would love that scratch. That scratch would mean something totally different to you. Why don't you just treasure the scratch now? I remember it being just one of the most beautiful, simple stories about how it was all about treasuring, really. Treasuring, having respect and gratitude for just life.
Also, like one thought can just change your reality in the moment.
Absolutely. And exactly that, and how one new thought, we have a whole new reality on that one thing that took place. Scratch is a scratch.
Just to see the state of my car now. Like, since Dave told me that story, I'm like, nah, doesn't matter. And like, there's just rusty hair everywhere, and there's scratches everywhere, and there's rubbish. It's like we've completely let it go down here.
Yeah, we really milked that story.
We really milked it. But it really meant something to me, because I think I have been quite, like, I'm grown up. Like, my dad hoovers out his car every weekend, and if the dog goes in it, it's in its own place with its own blanket. And kind of, I told my dad that story, it did nothing for him. But for me, it really, I was like, wow, it's just a car. Like,
yeah.
And we don't know how long we've got Rust. So he's basically the king of the car now. He does what he wants.
Some lad. Thanks, Kimberly.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Daniels?
Can you hear me? Yeah. That story actually just reminded me of something that occurred during the week, and it was just like another one of those little insights where my mind just went just to a different space. And it was that I can't even remember what it was I heard or what I was doing, but what you were talking about then in the instant where moment to moment your thought changes and your experience changes. And I was thinking about that, and then it was like that the realization that not only is in every single moment, every new thought that comes through, am I having a new experience, but the realization that every single moment I'm being created and I'm being thought every single moment. And it was just like, oh my God, like what what even does that mean? But just the I can't even find the word, but like the hugeness of that it's not thought that is happening, like I am being created, being lived, being expressed in every single moment. And then this whole thing of, oh my God, so when we die, like some people just stop having that little puff of their created expression or whatever it is. And just this whole, just led me on this whole thought train of the idea that, a bit like what Alice was saying earlier, that nothing can ever be wrong in any moment, because every single moment we're all just being created in the moment, we're being lived in the moment, we're all just like, I have no control over that whatsoever, absolutely no control over whether I'm created in the morning, whether I'm created this afternoon, whether, you know, there are obviously little elements and things that we can do when it comes to safety. I'm not talking about that kind of thing, but it was like just that wow, like the whole of me, everything about this physical meanness and is just popping up and being created and being experienced. And I don't know if I'm putting it up, you know, the words can't do it justice as to what I like saw in that moment, but it was huge that it wasn't just my thinking moment, it was me, the idea of me, the like experience of me and all of us. And it was just yeah, what you were saying then just really reminded me of that mind mash I experienced during the week.
Don't mind mash is love. That's where it's at. You know, it's the principles are pointing to something so big you could never get your head around it. You know, science can never find it. It cannot find it. It never can. It's impossible. Unless it can create something that studies the uncreated, which is nothing, it will never find it. Sorry. Look, that's where the magic of life truly lies, is in that fact. Because no matter what, wherever we go, no matter what we learn, no matter what we discover, we can never truly know the majesty of the Creator. And I'm not talking religion, I'm not talking a man. I'm talking about the force that creates. The force of whatever it is, that thingness. Stuff, the thing that creates stuffness. And now when people come to us with problems, we try and point them toward that you're talking about there, Lou. Because that is the stuff. People don't want to, so many people, you know, there's a reason why we do it over 3 and 4 days. It's because most often, if people were only to come for 1 day, they would go, well, that was bullshit. It's day 2, people generally start to quieten down. Day 3, people start to have insight. If people can stretch to day 4, awesome. That's where people kind of really start to pop. It's in that realization, that magnitude of mind, those bigger, deeper points, those bigger revelations, that life gets completely reordered and problems no longer appear as problems. New perspectives are born. This stuff cannot not create. It will always create. It's a timeless creator. It creates time. It creates birth, it creates death. It creates. And it can't not. And when we start to, that's why we talk about this. This is why we talk about this, and this is why we've gone to so many different places and met so many different populations, and we've spoken about the same thing, only to see all these, a variety, the vast rainbow spectrum of problems. People wake up and no longer a problem. No longer a depressive, no longer a this or that, an anxious person. An individual wakes up to the magic of that they are, beyond the ego. Now, are people aware, and can people put this into words? 99.9% of times, no, they can't describe what's happened. I don't know why something's changed, but I can't explain it. I know I couldn't really explain what happened for me. I tell a story about it now. It's not it. But the depth that you're speaking about there, Lou, to me, that's where the magic lies. It's no longer an inquiry into the ego, into the identity, into the idea of who we think we are. It's an inquiry into what are we? And it's a very different conversation. And the power that lies in that question, what are we? It is when it starts to reveal itself, the power, people will feel it. They know it. They recognize it. They talk about it. That's so beautiful, love. Thanks for sharing that, Lou.
Thank you.
So Lou,
were
you're
you
going to
gonna
say
say
something
something?
else?
I can't remember what it was now, but another little thing that just came to mind there. I saw this really cool, I have to send it to you, on Instagram a couple of days ago, and it was like this scientist, talking about scientists' prediction of I think it was something like 50 billion years, our galaxy is going to collide with this other galaxy, and they've created this visual representation of like what's going to happen, and it looks so cool. You see these two galaxies like coming together and smashing into each other, and then what comes off of that is just this mass creation of like even more things and galaxies and planets and stuff. And you think that what you're speaking about there in terms of it can't not create, it's like even when you look at it from that perspective, seeing the visual element of how things are constantly coming from nothing and then creating everything and back into it, it's like, yeah, it's really cool. That reminded me of that.
Yeah, definitely do send it. That sounds cool.
I think I've seen that.
Look, I've got a friend who, when I was going through my divorce, he was talking to me about creation and destruction. And he said, we've labelled one good and one bad. But he said, creation and destruction are one and the same. Because it could seem like two galaxies coming together, but it's always creating something new. But we'll say that one thing's good and one thing's bad. So at that time, it's like, oh my God, everything's crumbling around me. I've destroyed this and people are angry with me. And it's like it was a creation of something different, a new life. And it's like when we take out the judgment, it's like there is just that moment of creation. And I think for you to see how you're being created moment to moment, it takes it out of the personal, like not your thinking. It's like it's all of it. And I think that's the cool thing. You realise it's true for all. It's total. And I think it's so easy to, like I often say, when we share, we like to share stories of when we get caught up and don't see it, but it can be really easy when you watch people present and you go on YouTube and you type in 3 principles and you see people's interviews and
transformations. You
seem to think that they kind of have this transformation or they have this insight and they then just stay up here and they don't get lost in the nitty gritty of humanness, but just knowing that everyone does. And like I've loved to get to spend time with different facilitators and go and live with them sometimes for up to a month and have the privilege of that, but just to see people's moods, like they have moods, and in relationships there might be a little bit of friction and just ordinary, like it's really, really ordinary. And I think it takes it out of there's somewhere to get to, or we're not getting it right, or we should understand, or we need to be better. And you see that this moment is being created beautifully. And yeah, to go easy on yourself. And I think I felt like I've got to hear so many beautiful people share. And then I know that sometimes I've come away from retreats and then had a one-to-one with someone and they've been like, well, it was amazing. I loved hearing people share, but I've not had that experience. I want one of them. I want one of those shapeshifters. I want one of those bang moments. I want to pop, but I have so many conversations with people then who like, yeah, it might be that slowly things shift and they don't even recognize it till they look back and they're different. So just knowing that if we have an expectation of what this is going to look like when we understand or when we see,
it's not that.
It's not that. I promise you, it's so much more ordinary and everyday. Like, one of the other things I mentioned on that talk I said I found was that I'd gone out to dinner the night before the conference with a group of people that were speaking at the conference that I didn't really know very well. And I just had the best night and I felt so comfortable. It was almost like I was with my family. And for me, that was huge. And I appreciated it so much. To someone else, it might be really ordinary just to be able to enjoy people that you don't know very well's company and have a meal and feel comfortable. But I realised how ordinary and everyday this understanding is. Those ordinary things that suddenly are available to us. Because like I didn't feel comfortable even around my closest family a lot of the time. Like you've seen some of our Christmas videos and you're like, God, you just look like you want the earth to open up and swallow you. You look so uncomfortable in your own skin. And I think sometimes I can get frustrated with myself now, like wanting to see something else or wanting to drop this part of my ego. But I only have to reflect on what has fallen away, like where I am now compared to where I was before understanding this. And I'm so grateful just to be able to have a meal with with a group of people and feel comfortable. That's huge. And like I think I mentioned the week before, I'd been up here and had a meal and there was probably about 12 people around your table and I was really shy. I didn't talk to anyone and I just sat there and felt really uncomfortable. And that was like 10 years into understanding the principles. And so I can't summon it at will, but I'm grateful for when I do then experience just being comfortable in my own skin in the moment. And then I remember at that mealtime, I was just like, yeah, I've got nothing to say. Probably like a dickhead because I'm not saying anything. Never mind. And just sat there and felt uncomfortable and it was fine. Whereas before that would have been such a big thing. Oh my God, everyone's going to think you're an idiot. Why didn't you share? You look rude, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, you see how everyday and ordinary this is. Like, and then that night where I thought I probably would be uncomfortable with about 20 different speakers, some of them like just people I think are amazing who are sharing on the stage and I just felt comfortable and I enjoyed it and I chatted and I had a good laugh. But you see how subtle it can be and how easy it is to miss that changes have happened. So I want people to know that because I think we can give ourselves a hard time and have an expectation of this. And it's those expectations that often keep us trapped or the feeling of trapped.
Yeah. There's something you said there about this aspect of ego that you would like to see something around. I think one of the beautiful things is we probably all have those. But the moment we're not thinking about them, they don't exist. You know, and this is the same for any problem. The moment we stop thinking about the problem, it ceases to exist. It only exists within the mind. It only exists as a thought. Its only capacity of being created as what looks like a problem is a thought. It's via thought. This is why I mentioned a few about my mate who says he's an addict. I'm like, where's your addiction when you're on your digger and you're digging between the shit pipe and the electric cable? When you're not thinking it, you know, what are you thinking about when you're on the digger? Well, it's so I don't rip that up and I don't puncture that thing so I don't have to fix it. Right, well, where's all your cravings? Are you craving drugs at that point? No. Where's your addiction? Where's the addict? Where's the problem? There isn't a problem in that moment. So then I'll ask him, and I remember one day he came running up to me and said, I've seen what you mean. He says, it's so true. And it was when he got in the van and saw a cigarette lighter and he wanted a cigarette. No, I want a cigarette. But he caught himself. He said, 5 seconds ago, I didn't want a cigarette. I didn't need one. He realized that addiction is thought. It's not an illness. that when we are not thinking about it, we don't feel it. So it's like when we start to see this, it's like problems. Problems are always one thing, they're thoughts. They're only a perspective of mind. A problem is a perspective of mind. I'm not awesome at mathematics, but I could write out a mathematical... My mathematics teacher, Duncan, who's an awesome man, I adore this fella now. Hated him at school, he was a maths teacher. No, I didn't actually realise. But it would never be a problem to him. It was a problem to me. The equation's neutral. The problem only exists to me via thought because I don't understand it. It's only a problem because I don't understand it. That's what problems are. They're thoughts, not things. It can be really, really easy for us to kind of think we need to fix ourselves, but the moment we forget, we no longer need to fix ourselves because it's gone. It's like me with depression. I used to suffer from depression, so I was told, so I was diagnosed, so I'd tell people. But when I was laughing with a friend at work, where was my depression? Where was my anxiety? Where was my anger? Where was the problem? And seeing this, Alice spoke an awful lot about the moment. It's like in this moment. That's all there is. People often carry the idea that they have problems. What are they? They're memories. What are we truly carrying? We're truly carrying problems, we're truly carrying memories. There is no outside of the mind that we can ever experience. You cannot experience this call outside of consciousness. Your consciousness, my consciousness. You can't experience relationships outside of your consciousness. You cannot experience the taste or sensation or sound, smell, texture outside of consciousness. The entirety of reality is a spiritual manifestation of consciousness. Problems are manifestations of consciousness, so are solutions. This is why when people lose addiction, quite often it comes to them via insight. I no longer want to do this. I know when I quit smoking, it was a moment. I no longer want to do this. When I quit drinking, I used to drink a lot. When I quit drinking, it was, I don't want to do this anymore. And drugs, I don't want to do this anymore. It was a change of mind. It was a change of thought. When we piece that bit back together, this is going back to that magnitude that Lou was speaking about. When we start to see the magnitude of consciousness, and we start to see the magnitude of mind or thought, the true magnitude, to realize that it truly is the only thing that's ever going on, a singular force or spiritual essence, creating what appears to be a mundane everyday life. But it's our mundane everyday life. Ours.
Going back to what you said about like addiction, just a new thought. I don't want to do this anymore. Like that's always been within us.
Like, we've always had insight since the moment we're born. Like, I was telling someone the other day, a family member had quite severe anorexia from the age of 9 to 18. She was hospitalised 3 or 4 times, a few times when they thought she was going to go into organ failure and force fed through tubes and all kinds of things. And then at 18, she finished A-levels, did really well, and she wanted to be a doctor. And they said the only way she could be a doctor was if she maintained a certain weight and saw a psychiatrist every week. And she said, I wanted that more. And she said, I wanted that more. And she had this insight, I'm not going to do that anymore because I want this more. And I think whenever you look back in your life, you realise this has always been there. Our ability to change our mind. When things have felt like everything to us and totally insurmountable, and then some way we get through them, or we have insight, or they drop away, or things that have seemed like the biggest problem, and then we look at it an hour later, a day later, a week later, a year later, and it seems like a nothing. And then things that maybe have happened in our lives that at the time seem like a nothing, that we can big up and make it seem like everything when we bring it back in an argument. Like, you see how whether something seems big or small, or it's all a perspective, it's all within mind, it's all within our mind. And it's always been that way. And I feel like Sydney Banks came along and he just shone a bit of light and was like, hey guys, wow, like, I've seen something deep about life. I want to try and share it with you. And then he spent his whole life being like, no, that's not it. Because there's concepts, and we'd be like, oh, it means this. And he's like, no, it doesn't mean that. It's before that. It's before that. And he kept saying, it's before. I'm like, oh, it's about insight. And he's like, yeah, insight's beautiful, but what I'm pointing to is before. Where does insight come from? Don't get so caught up on looking for insights, but what's before? Where's that coming from? And it's like that space that you experience, Lewis, like that beforeness. Like, wow, there's something before the creation of me. And we can't put words to it, but we sense it, we feel it. All of us do, we intuit it, which is why so many people say this is like a remembering, a coming home, a recognition.
But it will always be beautiful. Not necessarily the journey to get there.
Yeah, sometimes seeing your own ego in your face can be really uncomfortable.
That can be really uncomfortable from time to time. But when people find themselves, it is always a beautiful thing.
Rusty's in a completely different experience now. It's like slobbed out on the beanbag. Probably waking up then.
It's dreaming about Lee.
Is that me again?
Has anybody got any questions, comments, queries, damning statements? Anything they'd like to share? Ali, I'm going to let you unmute yourself. Keep messing it up when
Yeah, it's just amazing. I'm back in that place where nothing's wrong, nothing matters, nothing's needed, nothing's missing. And I had questions when I came to this call tonight, but it's just quiet. There's no questions. There's nothing there's nothing I need. There's nothing I need to know. And there's a recognition that I never need anything. I never need to know anything. I have no questions. It's the mind. It's the mind that wants everything, thinks something's wrong, thinks something's lacking, thinks something's missing. I'm not enough. And I need answers. But it's not me. And when you're resting in this place, it's just beautiful. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. It's kind of, I don't know, just kind of emanating, and it's just lovely. But yeah, I'm just going to keep repeating myself and just keep saying the same thing. But thank you guys. That's just, it's lovely. It's just beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, love. You're welcome. Thank you for being part of this. But I'll reiterate this point time and time again. It's not us. It's you, love.
Yeah, some people just want us to shut up, don't they?
Mm. Most people.
Like, can you stop
Do
talking?
you two ever shut up? No, it comes from, this is it. This is the other thing. We can't take any praise for it. We can't. It's not. I don't get to choose it. It's like, it's got nothing to do with me. I can't take any praise for any of it. I can't even take praise for waking up. I didn't do that. I just have gratitude. I'm thankful. And people have their favourite teachers, and they have their idols and the gurus. To me, I always say this, but it's inhaled a moth or something. I'm vegetarian. I had to spit it out. What was it? Did you say?
I didn't see.
Something trying to get me to shut up. You see, it's like try to stick a little mothy sock in my mouth. That's what you're trying to do. Yeah, my real inspiration are the people who hear. Those are my kind of gurus. They're my inspiration.
I was going to say also, like, we speak to so many different people, all backgrounds, all ages, and like we're speaking to a 12-year-old at the moment who's got problems with she doesn't want to eat, and she's got dangerously thin at the moment. But it's nice to have all these kind of conversations with her and just see her total wholeness. And when she comes, she chooses to speak to us. I'm like, she's 12 years old. We bang on for like an hour and a half, and she chooses. She has to see a psychiatrist at the moment, so she comes on and she tells us all how terrible the psychiatrist is and what he wears and what he says to her. And she argues with the psychiatrist because she sees the truth in this. But at the moment, she said it feels difficult. And it's so nice because like we chat to her, and like within a short period of time on the call, like you see that all of her ideas of her eating and needing to eat more, like it falls away, and we just get to connect with her and have a laugh and know that she has at any moment could have an insight that all that shit falls away, and also that she's all right as she is. And I have no idea what lessons she has to learn in life. If that's what life's about, again, I don't know, but it's so nice to still be able to connect and not expect or have an agenda with someone to drop that or see this. It's like whatever people see is beautiful, and they're all right. They're all right as they are. And when we don't focus on the problem when we're talking to someone, it's amazing how quickly like it falls off their mind and they're just in the moment. A bit like what Kim was saying earlier, you just get to spend a moment with someone and you see their light go on for that time, and that's enough. And then what insights they may have, cool. But I know that it can't come from us. And like when I had the experience of listening to Sid, and it was just so life transforming for me. And then everyone else in that room had their own experience. And my auntie had seen Sid live quite a few times. She's like, oh, it was a really lovely talk. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, what? Did you not just hear what he just said? Like, my mind was blown. And so I saw even in that moment, like Sydney Banks couldn't have given that feeling to me. because otherwise everyone else in that room would have had that experience. It had to come through me. So he was a guide, he was pointing, he was saying, look back inside, but I had to wake up to it. And it's like, that's why it's so cool when people hear, because it can't be the speaker, otherwise everyone would have the same experience with the same talk, and we don't.
At the same time. So that's when you can find gratitude. Thank you. I'm so thankful. And gratitude, bloody hell. Gratitude not for a thing, not for an object, but for life itself. Wow.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, bless you all. Loads of love.
I know we didn't really advertise it very, yeah, but we're doing it again in 2 weeks.
Terrible.
We're going to be trying to do it every 2 weeks, Thursday 7 till 9, and we're actually having someone look at our website to try and make it more dynamic and make it easier to add things so that we actually do it. And trying to get, we might even have a new logo. We're not sure. Someone told us that ours doesn't fit in things very well, so getting all organised.
Getting professional, aren't we?
I don't know about that. But yeah, please, if anyone has any questions or comments, we've got the Facebook page, or email us, because I know sometimes people don't want to share on the calls, but if there's something you'd love us to speak to and you don't want to speak up, then you can either privately put it in the chat box, or you can message us before, like, the Thursday night, and we'll sort of read it out anonymously, and
word.
then and then speak to that.
Going? Any more things anybody wants to say? Going. Go. Cool. So when is it? This next?
2 weeks from today.
I wasn't listening. 2 weeks from today.
I don't know what the date is.
That date. The date of 2 weeks from today. Cool. And it'll be on Freedom Thinking anyway, won't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. It's really interesting. I'm just going to finish. I'll shut up. Another moth's going to try and put its sock in my mouth. Because there's tons of them in this room. I can't kill them. The clothes moths, I can't kill them. They just live here now. There's one on the wall right there.
Anyway, what's the point?
It's interesting seeing how a group change. The dynamics of the groups change continuously, don't they? New people are coming and old people drift off, and it's really interesting to have this new group of people, and it's beautiful. I'm really, really thankful to have you lot on here. It's really nice.
And then we get people like Doran that have been away for a while and they're back.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, dude.
With Jack.
Hello, Jack.
Is he allowed out for walks again now? Cool.
But it's illegal to smoke in South Africa.
It's what?
It's illegal to smoke here.
Is it?
Yeah, they banned cigarettes.
Shit.
That's funny.
Mate, I'm so sorry.
But thanks, guys. Thank you.
Right, dude. Nah. Go and tear your hair out. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you lot. Lots of love, everybody.